And so just by taking a little bit of time with this right now, we're going to save money in the long run, and that's the whole purpose. So as we're planning for spring, we're thinking about all of those beautiful plants that we'd like to add to our yard. And for our perennials, we're envisioning what they're going to look like in just a few months. But I think this year, at the top of my list, I would like to save just a little bit of money because, like everyone, the cost of living has gone up and everyone's kind of feeling the pinch. And we definitely have been, because we've had to do some things with the house, and that's all fine. But if we could save money and still have a gorgeous yard without skimping on anything, then I'm going to try to do that. Now, here in California, in Southern California especially, we don't get very cold, so the weather lends to some of our annuals lasting more than 1 year, and I've said that many times before in my garden videos. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but since we are in an environment or in a climate where some of these things will last multiple years, I think I'm going to play on that and not try to have so much waste in the yard. So if a plant or an annual is looking pretty decent and healthy, then I'm going to see if I can sustain it through the next season by kind of treating it like those clearance plants that you find at Lowe's or other places where you bring them home and rejuvenate them back to life. So I think that's kind of going to be my mentality this year, to save just a little bit. I'm still planning to, of course, introduce new products or new plants into the yard, but I'm going to try to save a little bit by doing just that. So I'm going to start with this plant right here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat it like those clearance plants that you find at Lowe's or other places, where you just bring them home and rejuvenate them, give them a good amount of attention and some fertilizer, and sometimes we can bring them back and they can look even better than they originally did when they came into the store. So what we're going to do with this, and this was originally a clearance container that I popped into this hanging basket, so I've already had like 2 uses out of that one container. I'm going to trim this back, and this is full of Super Bells and Superbena, and I'm just going to trim it up. I've already trimmed up one of my hanging baskets near the garage, and I think by cutting it back, it will just kind of rejuvenate it, because right now it's really super leggy. Like all of this right here has to go. We don't need the plants to be sending energy to all these leggy limbs down here. So I think by cutting it up, and I'm going to cut it more than they recommend, I'm going to take it all the way up to the top of the rim of the hanging basket, and hopefully by doing that, it's going to stimulate all this growth from the middle section, and then it'll probably overflow from the sides. And I've done this before and it's been pretty successful. And so since this is relatively new this last season, I haven't had this in here for more than 2 years, I think it's going to be doable. Another thing that is super important, by cutting all of this extra leggy branching off, then you've also cut away all of that, mildew or any kind of like mold and decay that's happening underneath the green. And I know it's blooming right now, but those blooms, they're not necessary this time of year. What we want is for them to look beautiful in the spring, when everything else is doing great and the weather is a lot more sunny and they're pushing more growth and it's at the height of their growing season. So that's what we're planning for. So right now it's okay to have blooms, and it's wonderful to have blooms this time of year, but it's not looking like it should anyway. So by cutting it off, it's gonna just really help it down the line. So again, I know I've shown this before in a video because I've cut these back before, but there's a lot of dead material under there, and by cutting that away, you create better airflow and you decrease the likelihood of like mold and mildew developing. And by cutting all this away, the branching on the top is going to be a lot more sturdy, and it's going to push many more blooms, which is what we want to see in the springtime. So I'm going to grab my shears. It's going to be a really easy fix. And so just by taking a little bit of time with this right now, we're going to save money in the long run, and that's the whole purpose. So I do have a lot of great things planned, but I think by keeping this in the garden, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so that couldn't have been any easier, just cutting it around the rim of the hanging basket there. And I know it seems pretty drastic, but as I was working through this, I noticed that there was a lot of moisture, and also I started to have a white fly problem. And that's mainly to do with the fact that this plant was stressed. I hadn't really taken care of it in a long time because we had gone through the holidays. And here lately we've had a lot of dry weather. We recently had rain, but we've had a lot of dry weather. I've turned all of my drip irrigation systems pretty much off. And so I think that plant was a lot stressed. But what I do notice is that when I was cutting away, there's some growth coming from the inside. So I think we're on the right track. And so I just used a little bit of my Plant Tome fertilizer. I'm gonna hit this with some water soluble fertilizer as well to give it a nice jolt of nutrients so that it has the energy that it needs. And I'll be spraying this with some Captain Jack dead bug to kind of get rid of the rest of whatever's ailing this plant. But that's pretty much it. I'll just kind of let it go. I'm not really going to put the drip irrigation system back yet because we're going to have some rain. But after that rain passes, then I'll probably start watering these every like 2 or 3 days. They don't dry out too fast this time of year because they're not in the sunlight that long. But I think I'm so happy with the way this worked out that I'm going to continue now with the rest of my hanging baskets here. I have 2 more left. I've already done the one on the garage, like I said before. So I'm excited to get started, and maybe hopefully we'll see how they do. Now, if they die, no big deal. We'll just replace them. But I thought, let's give it a shot. So let's do the other 2 right now. So now I'm here at this next hanging basket, and in this hanging basket, I have this beautiful Super Bells Double Twilight. This is going to be, if this survives, the 4th season. I haven't had anything in my yard last that long. This is an extremely hardy variety of Super Bells, which is a Calibrachoa, and it's absolutely loved it right here. I cut it back last year. I cut it back the year before. I don't know if it'll come back this year because I don't see very much strong branching in the middle, but I'm going to give it a try. And if it doesn't work out, then like I said before, we'll just replace it. But if I can save some money, I'm gonna give it a go. So we're just gonna do like we did with the last one and cut it up to the rim of the hanging basket, and I'm sure it'll look a lot better because it's a little bit stressed. This is the 3rd and final hanging basket that I trimmed back, and it looks really nice and clean. And I know that there's some people that probably have watched me trim this back thinking, what in the world was he doing? It was beautiful before. But if you had seen this a couple weeks ago, it's a lot fuller around the sides, and it was really starting to get scraggly. Some of those branchings were starting to die off, adding to the moisture problem that a lot of these have this time of year. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna trim those back. It didn't do very well after we had our shingles scraped off the roof because we have a new roof now. So it got a little bit beat up that way. And I noticed that at the base of the plant, it was coming back very strong, super green, and it looks like it's very sturdy in the way it is growing back. And if you see that close up right now, you can tell exactly what I'm talking about. There's plenty of buds on there, along with a lot of really deep green growth. So this is a really healthy plant, and I think that it has a very good chance of making it a whole nother year. I know that this seems really weird, especially to cut off blooms, but you know, this time of year we're doing that in our yard anyway. We're cleaning up the debris, we're getting rid of a lot of the things that can harbor disease, and we're planning for the spring. So this kind of goes right along with that. And by getting rid of all that excess moisture and maybe some of those disease-prone branchings that were underneath, we're actually helping the plant and we're creating better airflow, which is exactly what we want. All I'm going to do, like I said before, is give them a little bit of fertilizer, and when they have a little bit more sun as we go into the spring, then a plant like this is just going to pop and look beautiful in a matter of no time. So I think it looks a lot better. I know that it looks way different, but at least it's cleaned up. It looks tidy. And if you see me in a couple of weeks planting these up, you know that they didn't make it. But I think at least 2 of them will be making it to the next season. There are things in the yard that don't even tolerate this climate, but these Superbells and these Supertunias can get down in the 30s and be absolutely fine. So that's why a lot of them do last 2 seasons, because they are so cold tolerant. Not freeze tolerant, but cold tolerant. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed today's video, and we have a lot planned coming up, and if we can save money while we plan for the future, then I think it's a win-win, and nobody can really argue with that. So we'll see what happens. I'll make sure to give you an update on these as time progresses. But until next time, everybody, thank you so much for being here, and we do appreciate those comments. So hey, while you're down commenting, why don't you let me know on what you do with your hanging baskets each year? Do you plant fresh every year? Do you have hanging baskets that last more than 1 year? That would be really cool to hear what you have going on in your yard. Until next time, everybody, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye now.